Top stories. 7 children are among the 16 active cases of COVID-19 in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Federation hits a record in daily COVID-19 vaccinations with over 1,000 doses administered on Tuesday. And Nevis is not taking the COVID-19 outbreak in the Federation lightly, says Premier Mark Brantley. Welcome to the Skn Newsline Newscast on Channel 95. I'm Abby Diskin. 7 children are among the 16 active cases of COVID-19 in St. Kitts and Nevis as the CMO announces an additional case on Tuesday night. Skn Newsline's Andre Huey reports.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Hazel Laws has confirmed that of the 16 active cases of COVID-19, 7 are children in the age range from 3 to 15 years old. All public and private schools in St. Kitts and Nevis have been closed for 2 weeks from May 25th to June 8th in an effort to help contain the spread. The other 9 active cases are adults between the age group of 33 to 49 years. She further said that all 16 cases are in stable condition and are being monitored closely.
This new case is referred to as case number 61, who is a national and is linked to cases number 51 and 52. Case 61 is in isolation. This additional case brings the total number of cases to 61, with 47 cases for St. Kitts and 14 cases for Nevis. It is important to note that 47 cases have fully recovered with 0 deaths. There are now 16 active cases, the highest number since we started our COVID response. These cases include 7 children between the ages of 3 years and 15 years and 9 adults between 33 to 49 years. The active cases are stable and are being monitored. We are working assiduously to contain this cluster of COVID-19 cases.
Dr. Laws made the revelation during her presentation on leadership matters on Tuesday when she announced an additional case, a national who contracted the deadly virus. It has brought the country's tally of confirmed cases to 61 with no deaths. Of the 61 confirmed cases, 47 were recorded in St. Kitts and 14 on Nevis. 45 of the 61 confirmed cases have fully recovered. Andre Huey, Skn Newsline.
The Federation hits a record in daily COVID-19 vaccinations with over 1,000 doses administered on Tuesday. Skn Newsline's Glenn Bart tells us more.
The outbreak of COVID-19 clusters on St. Kitts has spurred persons to be vaccinated, with the highest number of persons being vaccinated in a single day since the attempt began to reach herd immunity, according to authorities on St. Kitts and Nevis. Over the Whit weekend, many of the health centers around St. Kitts and Nevis were opened to allow persons to be vaccinated, as authorities closed schools and reintroduced some COVID-19 related restrictions in an effort to curb community spread of the virus that started with the infection of a hotel employee. According to Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris, the rise in the number of persons who got vaccinated for the first dose was encouraging.
I'm advised that today we administered 1,062 doses. This is again the largest number of doses that has been administered since we have started the rollout of the program. And I want to say that this effort was a collective effort across the Twin Islands of St. Kitts and Nevis, and all 17 health centers participated in this exercise. The records would reveal that at St. Peter's, we had 67 persons taking their first shot. At Molyneux, 35, Bastille, 94, Newtown, 157, St. Paul's, 10, Sandy Point, 13, Old Road, 26, Tabernacle, 10, Keon 48, Deep Bay 8, Sadler's 10, Charlestown 144, Brown Hill 53, Combermere 21, and at Cajola 29 persons were vaccinated making a total of 725 first-timers, as it were, being vaccinated today. Those receiving second doses total 337 for a total of 1,062.
Information from the Ministry of Health shows that as of Tuesday, 25th May, 23,340 persons had accessed the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Records showed that 51.6% of the targeted population had taken the first dose of the two-dose vaccine, while 19.1% had taken the second dose, representing 6,305 persons. Glenn Batt reporting for Skn Newsline.
When we come back, Nevis Premier talks tough on COVID-19.
Elliott's Funeral Parlor is the first licensed embalmer in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have a friendly and professional staff. At Elliott's Funeral Parlor, we offer a wide range of packages from $6,500. Homegoing service at chapel, locally made caskets, tailoring of outfit for deceased of your choice, wake, overnight with slideshow, funeral, death announcement, obituary, booklets, family pin-ons, memorial books, preparation of funeral arrangements, wreath, fresh and artificial. For further information, call 469-3298, 664-2007, or 660-0186. Elliott's Funeral Parlor in Gingerland, Nevis. Dedicated to those we serve.
I eat some veggies for dinner. Let me just check the amount of sodium in this can. Oh no, this is too much. Let me try our next option. They did say it's healthy to consume less salt. This is much better. I am salt smart.
Football is back, and the St. Kitts and Nevis Football Association will be bringing you live football on its website, www.sknfa.com, with Premier League Live. Without fans in the stadium due to COVID-19 protocols, you can now watch every single Premier League match this season on www.sknfa.com and click on Live TV. Games are shown live on every match day with halftime and post-game shows. It's Premier League Live. Commentary, analysis, action. Never miss a game.
Bless up, Dejo here, and I'm doing my part in the fight against COVID-19 by following all safety protocols and, most importantly, rolling up my sleeve for the vaccine. So I'm encouraging you to do the same, because that's our best shot of protecting ourselves, our family, and our friends. So don't wait, vaccinate. Let's roll up to roll out.
Auto Plus Car Wash, located on the College Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Bring your car to Auto Plus Car Wash to remove water stains, wiper marks. Get your doors, roof panel cleaned, seat floor mats, buffing, headlights, and engine wash. You get quality service at the best price at Auto Plus Car Wash. They really care for your car. Call 765-5140 or visit them on the College Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Auto Plus Car Wash, where the service is number one.
Welcome back. As health officials on St. Kitts tackle the COVID cluster that has led to the shutdown of schools and various restrictions, Premier of the Nevis Island Administration told Nevisians not to take the situation lightly as it presents risks to the people of Nevis.
Premier Mark Brantley is urging Nevisians to protect themselves through vaccination, as the cluster of COVID-19 cases on St. Kitts poses a risk to people living on Nevis. Speaking at his May press conference in Charlestown, Premier Brantley made the point that a COVID case could easily find its way to Nevis and warned Nevisians not to ignore such risks and to act prudently and sensibly.
And so I am begging, beseeching, urging our people, do not see these signs and ignore them. If you ignore Trinidad and you ignored St. Lucia, and you ignored Anguilla, do not ignore St. Kitts. Because St. Kitts is Nevis, and Nevis is St. Kitts. Please let us go out and protect ourselves and our families. This now has got very real in a very short space of time. We're not now dealing with the theoretical position. We are not now saying, oh, look at CNN and you see what's happening. No, you can look at NTV and ZIZ and you see what's happening.
The Premier raised the potential for increased number of COVID clusters that could negatively impact the healthcare system and lead to a lockdown should it happen.
We talk about our capacity. If suddenly we have hundreds of cases, can we handle it? And what does it mean for us if the country is forced again into hard lockdown? I don't know about you, but I certainly did not like to be locked up in my home. And I believe I can speak for the majority of people that the freedoms that we take for granted, that we enjoy, to go out jogging and to go down the road and line with friends and to go by the bar and have a little drink, to go on the beach and go by one of the bars there and hang out and listen to a little music, that when those are taken away, when you're forced to line up again to go supermarket and only essential workers are allowed out, that you get fined and confined for being on the road after certain times or being on the road at all, that is not a nice feeling. And so whatever it takes to persuade our people, I'm saying, examine yourselves, your families, look at your little daughter at home, look at your grandma at home, and ask yourself, should you expose them to this deadly disease? I think not.
Premier Brantley said the Nevis Ministry of Health will allow health centers to be open for more hours to facilitate persons who need to be vaccinated. He urged residents to get vaccinated. Glenn Bard reporting for Skn Newsline.
Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris announces curfew and other measures to help stem the spread of COVID-19 in the Federation. More from Andre Huey.
A curfew has been put in place from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily for the next 2 weeks, starting Tuesday night, announced Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris. In a national address on Tuesday evening, the Prime Minister said the curfew is designed to stem the spread of the virus, which has seen 15 positive cases emerging since last week, after months of little to no cases. In addition to the curfew, the Prime Minister announced other measures, including reduction of passengers on public transportation and the suspension of all contact sports for the next 2 weeks.
A curfew will be imposed from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily, starting from tonight, and for 14 days in the first instance, to decrease the possibility of continued spread of the virus. The number of passengers and public transportation, that is buses and ferries, will be reduced to 50% of the established capacity. This is to facilitate physical distancing and a resultant reduction in the risk of transmission of the deadly virus. Thirdly, strict adherence to non-pharmaceutical measures, that is, mask wearing, sanitizing, and physical and social distancing, must be observed in the public and at places of business and worship. Remember, your personal responsibility in this fight is of utmost importance. Fourth, all contact sports are suspended for the next 2 weeks.
Schools remain closed for the next 2 weeks and no local examination will be conducted during this time.
If schools will remain closed for 2 weeks in the first instance to facilitate contact tracing, testing, and other necessary precautions consistent with the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act. Parents are advised to keep children safely at home. No local examinations will be administered during this period of school closure. The Ministry of Education has already begun to engage CXC to discuss alternative arrangements for any examinations scheduled during this time. Students, teachers, and parents will be subsequently informed of the relevant decisions taken by CXC. Teachers will engage students from grades 3 and higher via the established online modality of MS Teams. Absolutely no mass events will be allowed, as these could be super spreader events. 7. Funerals must be adhered to COVID-19 protocols and be mindful of capacity in the church. 8. Surveillance and extended contact tracing will continue. 9. Effective May the 29th, 2021, only fully vaccinated travelers will be allowed entry into St. Kitts and Nevis until further notice. Exemptions will be considered for citizens and residents.
Effective May 29th, 2021, only fully vaccinated travelers will be allowed entry into St. Kitts and Nevis until further notice. Exemptions will be considered for citizens and residents. The Prime Minister also used the opportunity to encourage persons to vaccinate.
And in the interest of public health, we have extended the hours for administering of vaccines. Health centers will be opened between the hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in St. Kitts from Monday to Friday, and in Nevis between the hours of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Extended hours of service will apply on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. until further notice. Please note that vaccines are a scarce commodity globally, but my government continues to work behind the scenes to secure extra doses of vaccines so that we would have sufficient to reach a herd immunity threshold.
Up to Newstime Tuesday, there were 15 active cases of COVID-19 in St. Kitts and Nevis. Andre Huey, Skn Newsline.
When we come back, teenagers in the Bahamas charged with murder and attempted murder.
The SKN Newsline website now offers you more news. Log on to www.sknnewsline.com for local, regional, and international news. You can also watch the latest newscast and keep abreast with news in sports, all from sknnewsline.com. That's www.sknnewsline.com. News at your fingertips.
You know, it's me, Mr. HE, and I'm here with one message: roll up to roll out. We all know how difficult things have been during this COVID-19 pandemic. While we continue to wash our hands, wear our face mask, and practice social distancing, how about we take it one step further and get vaccinated? Call the nearest health center to find out if you are eligible to be vaccinated, or you can contact the Ministry of Health at any one of these numbers down below. Don't be discouraged by the negativity. We all have a role to play in protecting this federation. So, St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out.
Stay abreast with news on St. Martin with SMN News. Visit www.smn-news.com for up-to-date news, scoops, opinions, and hard-hitting facts. SMN News, we tell it like it is. Visit our website www.smn-news.com.
It's the new and improved Skn Newsline Android mobile app. With the Skn Newsline app, you can watch your news reports, the Skn Newsline Newscast, sports, special features, and so much more. You can also send us a WhatsApp or call us directly. Go in the Google Play Store, search Skn Newsline, and download the app today. The Skn Newsline mobile app. News on the go.
Junior,
have popcorn, please?
Don't tell Skn Dev. Want some to please?
I can get some salt. More, please. Boy, take your popcorn from Junie.
Welcome back. Now let's look at regional news. Teen boys in the Bahamas are charged for murder and attempted murder in a fatal incident that occurred at one of the nation's schools last week. More from Eyewitness News.
2 teen boys were arraigned in the magistrate's court today in connection with the stabbing death of an 11th grade government high school student last week. A 15 and 16-year-old boys, both of Bozine Town, appearing before Magistrate Cara Turnquest-Devoe, charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Prosecutors allege that on May 18th, being concerned together, the teens intentionally caused the death of 15-year-old Kem Paul and attempted to kill another 16-year-old GSH student. Police say the 2 victims were in a corridor of the senior high school on the day in question when they were approached by the suspects. An altercation occurred, which resulted in the teen suspects producing a sharp-edged tool and allegedly stabbing the victims several times before scaling the school's fence and escaping. They were caught by police several days later. The 15-year-old had both parents in court today, and the 16-year-old had 1 guardian. The father of the murdered teen also appearing in court and cried during today's arraignment. The teen boys had no reaction. They were both denied bail and remanded to the Simpson Penn School for Boys until July 27th, when they are expected to return to court for a service of a voluntary bill of indictment.
Employers who make it mandatory for their employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19 are simply encouraging safety within the workforce. That's the view of the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony. Tamika Rodney of HGP TV reports.
Reports reaching this newscast indicate that several employees are being pressured by their employers to take the COVID-19 jabs in order to remain on their jobs. Although taking the vaccines has not been made mandatory for all by health authorities, those who wish to remain employed or gain employment in some sections of the business community are being pressured to access immunization. Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony on Tuesday during his daily COVID-19 update was asked whether this approach by employers is recommended.
I would want to say it's safety, because if all of us are vaccinated, then it means that we'll all be safe from the virus. So I think people should really think seriously about it and go out and get their vaccines, because the only way we can all become protected is if each one of us get vaccinated.
Meanwhile, in the last 24 hours, close to 6,000 persons were administered both first and second doses of the COVID-19 vaccines.
As of today, we have 187,234 persons who have received their first dose of the vaccine, and that approximates to 38.5% of our adult population. And for second dose, we've had 58,380 persons who received their second dose vaccine. This approximates to about 12% of our national population.
Approximately 100 vaccination sites have been established across the country. In an effort to increase the number of persons who access the jabs, the Ministry of Health will be launching vaccination drive-through initiatives in several of the administrative regions. Region 6 has retained its position with the leading percentage of adults fully immunized. Dr. Anthony further divulged that Regions 1, 7, and 8 have joined Region 10 in lagging behind in accessing the jabs.
There are pockets of hesitancy, and we have identified particular communities where there is a high level of hesitancy. And we have asked different community leaders to go in, religious leaders, to talk to those persons in the particular area, hoping that we can provide them with accurate information.
Tamika Rodney reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Internationally, the Gaza Strip is facing a new wave of coronavirus cases, worsened by Israel's 11-day bombing of the territory. The World Health Organization has voiced concern about the tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians in UN shelters unable to socially distance. The conflict also destroyed several hospitals and killed medics. 250 new infections and 5 deaths were reported on Tuesday. More from Al Jazeera.
Midat Amasi is struggling for breath. Like much of Gaza's population, he'd spent days at home in fear of Israeli bombing raids. The trouble was he'd been infected with COVID-19 and was getting worse day by day. Now his condition, doctors say, is very serious.
He was infected at home during the war. He had coronavirus symptoms, but he couldn't come to the hospital because he was scared of the shelling. We've had many cases like this that we've been dealing with.
In another ward in Gaza City's Shifa hospital, we find Majed Saleh, a doctor turned patient. Recently out of intensive care, it wasn't COVID-19 that put him there, it was an Israeli airstrike. The security camera in Gaza's Ministry of Health building shows the moment he was blasted out of his office. The building wasn't hit directly. This was collateral damage from a strike across the street. But it was more than enough to shut down Gaza's only COVID-19 test lab. Testing finally resumed at less than half the previous capacity on Monday. As well as keeping people at home, the airstrikes also drove tens of thousands out and into temporary refuge in school buildings. There was some rapid flow testing done in places like this. The positivity rates were as high as 50%.
No distancing, no masks, no protection, no hygiene. All of this created a bad situation. We know that corona spreads rapidly and that we have the British variant here in Gaza. 5 cases would have been enough to infect all 4,000 people in one school.
The Health Ministry is worried about the prospects of what it calls a disastrous third wave of coronavirus, which is why this is so necessary. 48,600 doses of the Pfizer vaccine delivered under the COVAX International Alliance, straight to Gaza's only ultra-cold freezer in the Rantisi hospital. In comparison to the vaccination campaign so far in Gaza, this represents a major delivery and a much-needed one. But in comparison to the need across Gaza, especially right now, it remains a drop in the ocean. This is far from the mass vaccination campaign seen just a short drive and a world away in Israel. So far, less than 2% of Gaza's population has been fully vaccinated. While Gaza has been focused on the immediate life and death concerns of a brutal but short war, a longer-term threat may well have been gathering pace. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Gaza.
A Dutch court has ordered oil giant Shell to cut its carbon emissions by nearly 50% by 2030. Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth brought the case, and it is being hailed as a significant victory for environmentalists. Again, we join Al Jazeera for the details.
A Dutch court has ordered oil giant Shell to cut its carbon emissions by nearly 50% by 2030. Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth brought the case, and it's being hailed as a major victory for environmentalists. Shell unsuccessfully argued that governments, not companies, are responsible for meeting targets under the Paris climate deal. The Dutch verdict could have major implications for similar cases around the world. Let's go live now to The Hague. Al Jazeera's Step Vasten is there. Step, what does this mean for Shell?
Well, this is seen as a landmark ruling. There was an outburst of joy here earlier in the court when the verdict was read out. Even some people were in tears. A cake is going around. 7 organizations, environmental groups, and 17,000 Dutch citizens have filed this case. And there was, of course, some optimism that they could win this case because the same court had ruled 2 years earlier against the Dutch state, a similar kind of verdict. But of course, when the verdict was actually read, they were so joyful. I'm actually joined here now by climate law expert Laura Burgers, who will give us some more insights into this ruling. Thank you for joining us. What does this important ruling now mean?
Well, of course, we have only heard the judge reading a summary. We didn't read the judgment yet, but we can safely say it's a groundbreaking judgment. And what it does mean is that Shell has a legal obligation to do its share against climate change.
So human rights here are at stake. Can you explain what that
means? Yes, so indeed, against the Dutch state in 2018 and 2019, the court here in The Hague said that the Dutch state can violate human rights by not doing enough against climate change. So that human rights can be impacted by dangerous climate change was already sort of, set in stone. But now that these human rights obligations equally apply to private entities such as Shell, that is actually quite groundbreaking.
And what does that mean? Does Shell have to completely overhaul its business now for 2030 because they have to cut 45%, nearly half of their emissions?
Exactly. So the court said that in 2030, Shell has to cut 45% of its emissions compared to the year 2019. And not only has Shell to cut its own emissions, but it also must do its best to reduce emissions of its consumers using Shell's products.
So including people driving cars, getting gasoline?
Yes, exactly.
So they have to go completely renewable then in a very short period of time?
Well, that is likely. The court said it's not an obligation of absolute emission reduction, so they can also compensate perhaps in a way so that it's a net reduction in the end.
We're talking now about Shell, but what could this mean for other companies, oil companies around the world?
Well, I think we can safely assume that Shell will appeal this judgment, but the judgment is already binding. So even though it will appeal, it has to act on it. And that means that it's very likely that other such cases will arise.
Are there any sanctions? I mean, how can a court enforce these kind of rulings?
Yes, so a court can then put penalties if Shell is not living up to this judgment.
Thank you very much. We have yet to hear from Shell. The lawyers just left the court as soon as the verdict was read out. They have promised some kind of response. And as Laura Burger said, we are expecting them, of course, to appeal. And maybe also Friends of the Earth and all the environmental groups will appeal because some issues were not clarified just yet. So this case isn't over yet, but of course everyone who has filed this case is very, very cheerful now.
Al Jazeera's Step Vasten reporting live from The Hague. Step, thanks.
Despite growing pressure on Japan's Olympic Committee to cancel the Games, it seems the executive members are not listening.
During the executive board meeting, we talked about the fact that some people are calling for the cancellation of the Olympics, but we did not discuss whether we should cancel or postpone it.
The meeting was held hours after one of Japan's most respected media organizations and an official partner of the Tokyo Olympics called for the Games to be cancelled. The editorial piece in the popular Asahi Shimbun newspaper said the Olympics should not go ahead because of risks to public safety and pressures on Japan's medical system during the pandemic. Tens of thousands of officials, support staff and journalists are expected to travel to Japan in the coming weeks. The Games' opening ceremony is scheduled for July the 23rd. Japan has reported around 720,000 cases of COVID-19 and 12,400 deaths since the pandemic started. but more contagious variants of the virus have caused a surge in infections in recent weeks.
There's an ongoing state of emergency, and Prime Minister Suga is expected to decide on Friday whether to extend that in 9 prefectures, including Tokyo. And while recent efforts have been made to sort of bolster and quicken the vaccine rollout in Japan, whether that's going to be enough to hold the game safely is still a big question.
The vaccination rollout has been slow. Only around 5% of people in Japan have been fully vaccinated so far. Some experts warn the Games could become a super spreader event. Polls show the majority of people in Japan are against the Games going ahead.
The government seems determined. So damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, and the people are scratching their heads. Why? Only 14% of Japanese favor hosting the Games, and about 80% want them postponed or canceled. And we have a who's who of CEOs speaking out against the Games. One of them called them a suicide mission.
According to the contract between the International Olympic Committee and Tokyo, only the IOC can cancel the Games. If Japan was to unilaterally cancel, then potentially billions of dollars in losses would fall on the local organisers. The contract says one reason to justify cancelling the Olympics would be if the IOC has reasonable grounds to believe that the safety of participants would be seriously threatened or jeopardised for any reason whatsoever. For those who oppose the Games going ahead, COVID-19 could be just such a threat. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.